Good afternoon. I am Pete, also known as Risk for Rewards on Twitter, currently with around 12,000 followers over there and about 500 subscribers here on YouTube. If you're not subscribing, if you like and you subscribe, you'll get all of the content as soon as it comes out. There's going to be plenty of coming out on YouTube, and it'll be coming out here first, probably a good few days before, or in this case, probably 10 days before, because I won't be doing Dublin Racing Festival previews until the days before, once we've got final declarations. So today we're just going to cover a few early thoughts on my views and opinions on how the markets might move, a few horses I think may not run, and who I think may end up winning quite easily at Dublin Race Festival, and what race they may contend at Cheltenham. So I'm going to keep it short because I know we haven't got all the time in the world, so let's get straight to it. So there are 14 races at Dublin Race Festival, and currently they're all priced up, which is quite rare. But as we've seen, everything's getting busier and busier and faster, and the markets are moving quicker and quicker. So straight into it. On day one, we've got the Nathaniel Lacey Solicitors Novice Hurdle betting. Like, this race at the moment is absolutely littered with horses that mainly Albert Bartlett types, the likes of We've All Been Caught, Three Car Brag, American Bike, Favre de Chamdou. There are so many talking horses that a lot of people are backing for these middle distance. Just to clarify, the Nathaniel Lacey is over 2 mile 5, so it covers the Ballymore and the Albert Bartlett trip. So these horses will be the intermediate to longer distance. So Hidden Valley Lake, who's the current favourite. So I just want to point out, with regard to Hidden Valley Lake, there's a lot of talk that this is not going to be the plan. There's a race that Henry does target. I can't remember where it is, maybe Clonmel. It's not going to be here at Leopardstown. I'm not saying definitely 100% because the trainer hasn't come out and confirmed that, but very likely. So you might lose the favourite, Hidden Valley Lake. My current view on the race is there's so many horses in it that it's going to be competitive. And I remember Galliard du Mesnil winning it a few years ago, and he went off 5-2. And I'd be surprised if when this does start cutting up, if they're not at least 5-2 or 3-1 the field. So my advice at the moment is just forget about the race and just let them cut up, let them choose their directions, and then you come back to it with a fresh mind, and you can go and attack it once you know the final runners. Onto the Spring Juvenile. Spring Juvenile is their version of the Triumph Hurdle Trial. So the current favourite is Lossiemouth, 1-2, as you would expect, because she is absolutely destroying everything she meets so far, and she's doing it very well, and that's without taking into consideration, obviously, she's getting so much weight from everyone. So therefore, she's going into this. The second favourite is Blood Destiny. In my opinion, Blood Destiny only ran last week and absolutely routed the field. Didn't have much of a race. I say definitely didn't have any race, because they gave him about 5 lengths at the start. They tried to make a little bit of effort, and then they just thought, no, we don't fancy it. Because in my opinion, all the horses in behind looked like Boodoo's horses. So their interest was not there to beat this horse, but he did nothing wrong. And it's quite obvious to see that Mullins obviously respects this horse, and they really like it at home. He was, of course, the horse I mentioned. Obviously, anyone who's been following from the start over on Twitter will be on Lossiemouth, hopefully at around 16-1. And I did put up Blood Destiny last week at 6-1, non-runner, no bet, as my two angles so far for this race. I'm not sure. Well, I say I'm not sure. I'd be surprised if Blood Destiny does run, especially with such a strong hand. Because Willie also has Galamicar or Macau. I don't know how you say it. It's a French pronunciation. And this horse was the horse that came second to Lossiemouth. It was a really big run for only her first start. So obviously there won't be any weight given between these two. But obviously she has got to turn the deficit around with Lossiemouth, which would be hard to do. But at the moment, the market's reading that. The markets are already at 1-2. So, I mean, do you really want to take an Antepost on 1-2 on a horse that's, one, she's got to get there. Two, they could throw Blood Destiny in. And three, you don't know what they're going to be racing against. Like, I'd rather just wait. And if she goes off 1-3 or 1-4, so be it. It's not a race you really need to get involved in, especially if you're involved ready for the Cheltenham Festival anyway. You'll just be looking for her to cement her spot. But she could become an accumulator horse close to the time. But for me, it'd be another no-bet race so far. On to the Irish Arkle. Now this is where it starts getting interesting. This not just for a view for the Dublin Race Festival, but for Cheltenham. Like, last year was very similar. We had Blue Lord, but absolutely fell in, like literally stumbled across the line to win this race, and then went on to finish third in the Arkle. Like, wasn't impressive at all, but it was just another tick in the box. I'd expect Mullins to throw not the lot, but his 2 milers at this. And at the moment, he's got the first three in the bet, and he's got Dysart, Dynamor, El Fabiolo, and Appreciate It. Currently, they've been going on and on that they are staying in the Arkle with Appreciate It, but every pundit, every person, everyone who's not Willie Mullins seems to say he's going to go 2 mile 4 or further. And I would agree with that. I don't think he's a 2 miler at all. So I can't. He could run here. Appreciate also only ran a week ago, so he may skip the Dublin Race Festival altogether. But you've got to remember, Dublin Race Festival is not for another 2 weeks. So for him to run 3 weeks later, he barely had a hack canter last time, so he could well be taking his position here. But I think the main two will be Dysart Dynamo and El Fabiolo, and they are the two to concentrate on, in my opinion. El Fabiolo, massive engine, ran John Bond so close at Aintree with such inexperience. But the jumping was sticky. It was okay without being anything special. Dysart Dynamo was the opposite. He was very much like the Underso mould, in the fact that went off, bolted off, and just jumped cleanly all the way around, and he just went away from the field. And it was very much like his hurdling days over in Ireland. They couldn't get near him. Not that they were probably trying, because we get this a lot in the novice chasing. But this should be a lot bigger test. I could see that even if these two came 1-2, they'd both still become the Arkle horses. And for me, currently at the time, I think Dysart Dynamo, El Fabiolo, and John Bon are the three to concentrate on. And I said that at the start of the season. I know most people say, well, yeah, that's obvious now. But at the start of the season, John Bon was 4-1, Dysart Dynamo was 20-1, and El Fabiolo was 8-1. So if you're on at those prices, you're laughing. But for me, of the two, depending on at the current prices, I think Dysart Dynamo will probably be around 6-4, and El Fabiolo about 2-1. Dysart Dynamo would be the one that I'd like to be with, because I think he will go out in front and he will bolt off and put pressure on the jumping, and that would be El Fabiolo's nightmare. I think he's got the engine for it, but if he doesn't meet them straight away, like as in if he doesn't get off to a good start, then it's going to be hard for him to keep up with Dysart Dynamo. But those two are definitely the two to focus on currently. Do you need to take those prices? It's up to you. It depends how much you think the race is going to cut up in behind. But even if it was just a 2-horse race with those two, I couldn't see it being bigger than probably even money in like 7-4, or say 5-4 and 2-1. So in reality, there is going to be other contenders. So you're probably going to get somewhere between even money and 6-4 Dysart Dynamo. But it's just with a view, obviously, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier about the whole win this race and win at Cheltenham, there'll be many markets up with stuff like that, and you should be looking at those sort of things. Because even if you think John Bond's going to win, if you want to cover with a horse like Dysart Dynamo, if you did miss the 20-1, then obviously this would be a good opportunity for it. On to Saturday's feature, which is the Irish Gold Cup. And we finally get to see Galopin Des Champs over 3 miles. It looks like he's going to take on Stattler. Normally I'd say, Willie might dodge the two in the market, but I think both of them need a run, both of them need to be tested, and both of them need to go over this trip, over fences, in a proper race. So this is going to be a brilliant race to watch. And those that are on the 6-1 for the Gold Cup, then it's one of those, let's hope he's just as good at 3 miles. He's won over 3 miles hurdle, so I don't see it as an issue at all. He's a lot more settled in his races, and he's looked a lot more the complete article. If Mullins gets this horse to win the Gold Cup, he's trained him to perfection by not listening to anyone and just doing what he does, which is, obviously, we know he's the master trainer. And he's brought him along slowly, up in a min-trip, one step at a time. But the most important thing is he's switched off. He's not buzzy. He's not running at his fences anymore. He's just jumping economically, and he really is beginning to look special. And providing he does the Gold Cup, I mean, he's 4-11 currently. So he's going to be one that will be in the multiples, probably with your other horses on the day, like your Lossiemouth. It'll probably be those two. Will probably pay about, I don't know, even money, or 6-4 on the day. So that maybe there'll be small, like little fun bets. But obviously you're looking at him with regards to festival, and Stattler fans will be looking at their horse with regards to the festival, and the distance between them will be interesting, because obviously with the Gold Cup in mind, you'll see just how good they are between each other. But I fully expect Galopin Des Champs to absolutely rip that field to bits. I think the ground will be in like the good to soft sort of region, and I think he'll absolutely shred that field, and that's what I'm hoping we'll get to see. So then the handicap hurdle I'm not going to cover, the handicap chase I'm not going to cover, and then the final we've got the Future Stars bumper, the race won by Fascile Vega emphatically last year. He absolutely demolished the field, and that's when everyone saw the 20s go to 10s, and then obviously he won that. Then before you know it, he's going off like even money or whatever for a champion bumper, and he then drifted all the way out to 2-1 on the day when the rain arrived, which was surprising, being obviously with Cuvega as his mum, that people didn't think he would stay the trip, or they're worried about it. So, but obviously that was not proven right at all. So, but going into the Future Stars, at the moment you've got like Facile Mode, Better Days Ahead, Chosen Witness, Westport Cove. Like, it is such a gamble at the moment. Like Facile Mode went into everyone's notebooks as like an absolute world beater when he won a very good bumper. But at the moment, you're just guessing so much with bumpers because they've had, say, one run. And you hear it all the time by Mullins. They're like, well, he showed us nothing at home. And then he comes here and he absolutely hacks up on the track. And then suddenly you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe he's just a horse that shows nothing at home. So there's going to be some of these. It's no different to having a small child playing a sport. So say you take a child to play football, they've never kicked a ball before. Some will be phenomenal. And then you take him back the next day, he'll be at that same level. There'll be others that could barely kick a ball, but then you take them back for the second time, and then suddenly they're even better than the other child. Different horses improve at different levels, and also, like as you've seen with horses like Chapeau du Soleil, like that was one of the worst, like doing everything wrong you could on your bumper debut. So you just don't know where the horse is at, despite what they show at home. So I think currently at the moment that's 5-2 the field. Again, that's going to be competitive. I just can't see you lining up. Say after the entries, there's going to be a lot of horses, and the fact that the favourite currently isn't a Willie Mullins horse, I can't see that Fascile Mode is suddenly going to be an even money shot. So I think again you're going to get a minimum of 2-1 the field, and this could be a busy field. So I think you want to decipher through it, try and pick the one that could win this, and then win the champion bumper because you'll get a great price on it. But it's one of those again after decks. I don't think you're in a rush unless you've got one at a bigger price that you really are expecting to go well, and you think the decks might. But from the front end, in my personal opinion, I don't expect it to move. So over to Sunday. So Sunday is very, very interesting currently because we've just had the news through this morning for the decks for the Clarence House Chase that Energumene is definitely planning on going to Cheltenham. So the cold snap's supposed to start to finish around Wednesday, Thursday, which means Cheltenham should have no issue with being on. So providing Energumene obviously has been entered today, so the intention is clear. The connections have made it clear. Providing they obviously take part in the race, then you're looking through the Dublin Chase, and you've got Energumene, who's now drifted out to 5-2 on the news this morning. Gentleman de Me finished almost like pulled up fifth. I think it was fifth of sixth behind Blue Lord, and looks a horse that either is a spring horse or just a once in a blue moon horse, because the way he destroyed Alan King's horse Edwardstone at Aintree was phenomenal. But before that and after that, he has shown absolutely nothing to that level whatsoever, and he looked pretty lifeless again last time out. So they might be just ticking him along, ready for the better ground in the spring, but we just don't know that currently. So he's pretty much wrote off. Sco Royale, brilliant horse, but he's not getting any better. Chacun Pour Soi raced yesterday, probably didn't stay. I thought he got to 2 miles, he was travelling the best, and then he found very little when the rest got the taps on. And then you've got Dunvegan. So in effect, Blue Lord could end up going off. Providing Energumene races definitely this weekend, like Blue Lord could end up going off 1-3 or 1-4 in this race. So I'm not saying steam in on short prices, but he's currently 4-7. So in a race where there's in a host where there's going to be loads of multiples and stuff. And my opinion on Blue Lord, this is very varied at the moment. I think that personally, with the Blue Lord situation, I think he's improved an awful lot this year. But they do think that he's a Ryanair horse. They said that at the start of the season when he beat Tornado Flyer, and that's what they were expecting. They put him in against Chacun Pour Soi in the 2 milers, not expecting him to do as well as he did. But he absolutely routed that field. But if you watch it, he was doing all his best work in the last 2 furlongs. So therefore, I think over 2 miles or 2 mile 4, I don't think either's an issue. I think he'll run to a very similar level, and he took his form up to that level on both occasions. He's now only sat, if he was to run at Cheltenham in the Champion Chase, he's about, I think he's about 3 or 4, I think he's 3 pounds behind Edwardstone and about 5 behind Energumene. But the yard will know whereabouts those two stand together. And most importantly, Willie Mullins is a man who wants winners. So currently, obviously, I back Blue Lord 18-1 for the Ryanair. I wouldn't put anyone off, non-runner, no bet, backing him for the Ryanair. My reasoning for this is, I think currently what we've seen is that I think Energumene is still the best 2 miler. I think it's very difficult to win the Champion Chase 2 runs in a row, 2 years in a row. And we've seen so many greats not be able to do it. Even Sprinter Sakura, it took him 4 years when he came back to do it. Altior obviously did it in recent years, but many do not. Even the best horses get beat at stupid prices in the Champion Chase. It just seems to be a very spurious, funny race. So, and obviously Mullins only broke his duck in it last year. So he will be keen to win that race again. However, he won't be keen to waste bullets. So everyone's obviously all focusing on Energumene. If Energumene wins Clarence House Chase this weekend, obviously, then there's no sweat there. He's going to go there as favourite. Edwardstone will be on the drift if he wins well as well. However, my biggest interest is the fact that what happens with Allaho. If Allaho does not turn up, he's currently around 2-1 on the exchanges. There's not been very many positive vibes at all. If either Allaho doesn't turn up or they're lukewarm on his chances, like say it's a rush prep from the yard, then there's a strong chance that Blue Lord will run in the Ryanair. I think if Allaho doesn't turn up, then Blue Lord will definitely go in the Ryanair. This is just my opinion, because they want wins, and so does the Isaac Swade and their team. Because I listened to a podcast the other day, and they were saying they always thought it was going to be the Ryanair. And if Willie Mullins turns around and says Allaho's not going, and I don't think the rest of the field has got much in it, you may beat Energamine, but there's no guarantee with that. Whereas I think you'll win a Ryanair. I think they will take that chance and they will go with the Ryanair. You don't get anything for finishing second, especially not to a stablemate. And it's not like he's a specialist. He's not like a Chacapoissois where he's specialist to that trip. I think he'll be just as good at the 2 miles or the 2 mile 4. So if you want to take him non-runner no bet, it's a no-brainer for me. But also you might get him there might be an option next week at the Dublin Racing Festival, Blue Lord to win at Dublin Racing Festival and win the Champion Chase, or the same with the Ryanair. So I wouldn't back him to win the Champion Chase personally. I do think he's improved, and I would not be surprised if he finishes ahead of Edwardstone. But I just would worry that he's not as good as Energamine. He may well be, but we don't know if he'll get the chance to find out. And if Mullins has his way, I can't see him not splitting them. If Allaho comes back, then it's fair game. Obviously, he can just turn around to the connections and say, which race do you want to run in? Because we've got Allaho for this, we've got Energamine from that, and he's in effect in a rock and a hard place, because he could be better than both of those, or he could be better than neither of those. And one could flop, but you just don't know which one it's going to be. He could end up coming second in either race. But for my opinion, currently from what we've seen, there's no guarantee we're seeing Allaho. So Ryanair non-runner no bet would be the one for me. I think it's about 4-1 or 5-1 currently at the moment. I'm not going to focus on the handicap. Over to the Irish novice hurdle. I mean, this is a proper catch-22, because I looked through the field and there are a couple of good horses. You've got like your Gaelic Warriors, Astro Diamonds, Irish Point, Il Était Tom in the pocket, Impere Pass, high definition. But in reality, who's actually going to run? Like Irish Point ran the other day, but could still pitch up here. And I think he's a 2 miler rather than a 2 mile 4. Gaelic Warrior's not going to go here. Astro Diamond could go here because he's campaigning there quite aggressively to teach her. Dark Ravens is the dark horse for this race and could definitely go here. Il Était Tom could go here. In the pocket, maybe. Impere Pass, I don't see. And then High Definition. I will be really disappointed if High Definition is turning over someone like Fascile Vega. Like, he was a good horse on the flat, but he was no like superstar, and I know he's achieved some huge ratings and stuff, but I don't want to see that sort of horse be able to turn over like a potential star in Fascile Vega. Problem is, Fascile Vega is 2-5 for this, which is kind of telling you what sort of stupid price he could end up going in the Supreme. The Supreme's always the most competitive race starting on the Tuesday. They always used to like the big each ways, the ways to get him beat, and you're like, well, he's definitely going to go off evens or whatever. But he just keeps scaring away opposition, and then suddenly we could be in the same position. If he gets sent off, if he does go off at 2-5 here, if you think he wins the Supreme, you've got to take the win and then win the Supreme, like win at the Dublin Race and the Supreme, or back in before that, because like if he goes off at 2-5, then his expectancy to win the race is significantly huge, and then when he wins the race, he'll still get shortened, and suddenly he'll be like 1-2 for the Supreme Novice, and it's just madness. Because Supreme's one of the hardest races to win as well. But this horse could be a superstar, but we just don't know it yet. And unfortunately for him, he's getting tarnished with the "you didn't look like Frankel" every time he runs. So he is beating good horses. Astro Diamond showed good form in the Royal Bond when coming third in between Irish Point and Marine Nationale. And where Irish Point wasn't, Astro Diamond wasn't really put in the race whatsoever. He absolutely demolished them like we weren't there. So, but everyone just plays it down and says, oh yeah, well you'd expect him to do that. So for me, Fascile Vega at the moment, you're not going to back him at 2-5 anyway. But this race could cut up and he could end up even shorter. And I just think if you think he's going to win the Supreme, you've got to find a way to get him on side in the double and then go with it that way. So unfortunately, that's the problem with these superstar horses. Now on to a much more interesting race. This should grab your attention. Seems we seem to have gone on a bit longer than expected. The Irish Champion Hurdle. So this is what you call a clash. I'm already hearing people starting to go on the Honeysuckle will be back and all of this sort of thing. For me, 3-horse race, quite simply, State Man, Honeysuckle, Vauban. The 1 horse of the 3 I can't have is Honeysuckle. Um, if she wins, I will be over the moon. I'll clap her home and all the works and all of that sort of thing, because she's been such a brilliant mare for the whole public, the crowd, and for all of us over such a long period of time. And she is a fantastic horse. But it scared me just how quick, straight away after she got beat by like Teahupoo and Classical Dream, who aren't, yeah, okay, they're more suited to the heavy ground and the 2 mile 4, but they were straight away, they were like into retirement talk. Like, I don't know whether it was just they were so shocked that she's finally been beaten, but you saw the connections into Henry straight after, and they started talking about the mare's hurdle, retirement, and all this sort of thing. And that to me, it doesn't say, oh, this horse will get her back. That's no, it wasn't like a Paul Nicholls speech where he says, don't worry about that. She'll need that run. She'll come on for it, and you'll see a £10 better horse next time. They were straight away. They were like, oh, maybe she's just old. Maybe it's coming to the end of her career and all this sort of thing, and that worried me. So therefore, I could see her maybe getting the better of one of these, but I can't see her getting the better of both, even with the weight allowance. If she does, I'll clap her home. But for me personally, you look at the market and you've got State Man and Vauban. State Man 5-4, Vauban 3-1. Willie has this really strange twinkle in his eye again about Vauban. It's like a bit like when he had Chac and Poissoir and he had other horses that everyone thought were better in the yard. When he talks about Vauban, he seems to get very excited, and it's almost like if it's not this year, then it'll be next year when he's grown again. So remember, he's a juvenile, so he's a lot younger than most of these other horses. So I think his comeback run was brilliant. I'd backed State Man that day, and coming into the bend, he was getting tucked in, and Sharjah was keeping him tucked in, and at the time there was no worries whatsoever. And then he couldn't get out, and then he got out and got round. I'm not taking anything away from State Man. I think State Man was the correct winner, and he stayed on really well to the line. But the way Vauban was travelling was very, very powerfully, and that just stood out. I was like, hang on a minute. So like if say they've both come on for their run and they've come into this, like Vauban's going to be travelling like that again. And you have to remember as well, looking back to last year, Vauban got beat by it was either Pied Piper or Phil Dor. I think it was Phil Dor on debut, when they thought it was an absolute world beater, and bumped into one of those, and they got the better of him with experience. And then he went on and improved and looked phenomenal. And this could be like, we didn't think we'd even see him this season. The fact that he's coming out, and also he's going to be going up again. So therefore, for me currently at the prices 3-1 and 5-4, like at the moment I'd be going with Vauban just because it's a bigger price. Like not a significant price. It's 3-1 bigger price. Like if I was pricing this up, like forget about, obviously Honeysuckle is in there, but I thought these two could be close together in the markets. Like maybe like a 5-4 and 9-4 or 2-1. So I think 3-1 is just too big. Am I saying State Man's the most likely winner? Yeah, probably, because he's priced that way. But could I see Vauban improving past him? Yes, I could. Could I see Vauban potentially featuring in next year's Champion Hurdle? Yes, I could. Whereas State Man, I think, is a very good horse, but he might just be winning these because he's fitter and he was more ready to go. So Vauban would be the play for me, and I have had a small bet on Vauban at 3-1 currently, and it's nothing against Honeysuckle. I just think she's a little bit older than obviously the rest of them. So I seem to have missed a race. All right, I'll come back to that race. I've missed one of the main feature races. So the flat race for the mares currently got 11-8 favourite in Fancy Girl, who was mighty impressive, but 11-8. We all remember what happened last year. Last year on the Sunday, I went through the entire card at Leopardstown. I skipped one race, and we had 5 out of 5 in the others, and we went into the last race, into the bumper, and I'd had 20 quid on the ACCA, and the bumper was something like pink in the park it was. She was 11-8, and the 20 quid would return 5 grand, and obviously she got absolutely stuffed. So my advice for you this year is, when we do, because we will be doing these things again, and when we do it, is skip the bumper, take the 3 grand or whatever profit instead, and skip the bumper. So one race that I did pass over by complete accident is the one race I've actually had a bet in. I've had a bet in the Nathaniel Lacey. Sorry, not Nathaniel Lacey, the Ladbrokes Novice Steeplechase, which is over the 2 mile 5 furlong, and arguably one of the most competitive and interesting races of the whole 2 days. And at the top of the market, you've got Mighty Potter and Appreciate It, who are both 5-2. Appreciate It has been recently backed from 4-1 into 5-2. Considering he's only supposed to be going on to the Arkle, and he also ran last week, it's significant that this little market move seems to be happening. That's nothing to say that's anything to do with Willie Mullins or what Mullins' decision is to whether he's going to the 2 mile 4. But it would make sense if they ran Appreciate It here. They could then work out it does 2 mile 4 or 2 mile 5.5 furlongs suit him better. And obviously they can answer a few questions. It would not surprise me if Mullins throws like pretty much the lot in here. Like he's got Galliard du Mesnil, he's got James de Berlais and Appreciate. James de Berlais, I think, will either go 2 mile 4 or 3 miles because they're the same connections as El Fabiolo. So they can leave El Fabiolo in the Arkle, and then this horse can go 2 mile 4 or 3 miles at the festival. James de Berlais is very interesting. Ex-champion hurdle contender, very, very like top draw horse. But no one's really sure on his trip currently, and I don't know, will he turn up here? He should do, and it would make sense. It's a good spot for him. Appreciate It. Is Willie definitely going to send him here? Is he going to go to 2 miles? Is he not going to go to anywhere here because he's only raced last week? No idea. So the bet for me actually at the moment, I'm not saying this price will shorten dramatically or what will happen is that Mighty Potter's currently around 9-4 to 5-2 general. And that's the bet that I've had. I've backed him at 5-2. The reason is pretty simple. He had one flop in his career, and that was when he went to Cheltenham. But over 2 mile 4 furlongs, and since he's gone novice chasing, he was impressive, but nothing like crazy. But his beating of Galliard du Mesnil, Banbridge, and all the best horses over 2 mile 4 furlongs was very impressive. He looked like he was going to go away and win by much further. He made a mistake, either 3 or 4 out, which scuppered him a bit, but it was like back on the bridle, let's go. And he just impressed me so much. And the fact that he beat Sir Gerhard at the end of Punchtown, I probably hadn't given him the credit for that when it was Dysart, Dynamor and Sir Gerhard. Obviously, Dysart, Dynamor had fallen. Sir Gerhard had just won the Ballymore. And I thought there's no way Mighty Porter was going to feature here at all. Forgetting about the fact that if you took away his flop, he had a very high level of form all the way through at Group 1 level. So he's now a Group 1 winner, and he's beaten the best so far at 2 mile 4. So again, he's going to come across a very different class. He's coming across the horses that are like the 2 mile to 2 mile 4 sort of region, like the likes of Appreciate It. They're going to be a bit quicker, but he's also coming across the 2 mile 4 to 3 mile region, the likes of Galliard du Mesnil, maybe Gentleman's Game, Journey with Me. So he's going to meet the best of all, really. So, but for me, I think he's a very good horse, and whether it's Appreciate It or James de Berlais, I'd rather be with him here and find out is he at this level, because then that way you'll know. Like if he's well beaten by Appreciate It or James de Berlais, then the chances are they're going to be whoever wins this is probably going to be Turner's favourite, and potentially will win there on the big day. So you need to have the correct thought process behind being able to back that horse for the Dublin Race Festival and for the win. I know there's many Appreciate It fans, many James de Berlais fans, but currently Mighty Potter is planned to go to the race, and unless anything changes or I hear or see anything, I can't really see where he's prepping other than going here. So for me, I'd like to see him go here, and I think the 5-2 is worth taking in case the race cuts up. If it doesn't cut up, he may well go off 5-2, 3-1 anyway. So that's your own choice. You can obviously double down, or you can just say, okay, yeah, I'm happy to ride my bet out. But I don't see him going off at 4 or 5-1, even if Appreciate It and James de Berlais. If Appreciate It runs, I can see Appreciate It going off favourite because he's a fan's favourite. But I don't see Mighty Potter going off at 4 or 5-1. So for me, Mighty Potter is one of my massive Turners hopes. I really expect him to go well in the Turners, and he needs to be featuring well to go in order to do that. So therefore, that was not such a quick summary of the Dublin Race Festival, but they're all my early thoughts. Going forward, I will be doing, as soon as we get the 48-hour declarations and we find out who's going where next week, I will be putting up YouTube videos for both individual days, but I'll also be doing written content with the stats, the data, and everything that drives to making those selections. Obviously, last year and the year before, we've had absolute blinders. As I said, we had 5 out of 6 winners, and they weren't all short prices, 8-1 shots and 5-2 shots on the Sunday, and we had a good few winners on the Saturday as well. And Dublin Race Festival has really set up Cheltenham both years running, so let's hope we can do that again. So if you're looking for where I am, obviously like and subscribe here on YouTube, or I'm at Risk for Rewards over on Twitter. Tomorrow's video will be the Cheltenham Festival Trials preview, which will be all of the races covered for Saturday, just general early thoughts across the 9-race bumper card that looks an absolute belter. Thank you and goodbye.